All right, I think we are live yet again. Thank you guys for joining me for this lunchtime live stream. I'm still working from home, coming to you guys from my house during lunch, taking a lunch break from my job. So thank you guys for joining me, where yet again I'm just hanging out, having something for lunch, having something a little bit silly, and talking about whatever random topic I decided to talk about for the day. Now, before anything else, I'm going to get myself all set up. I decided to do a little bit of day drinking because why not? So starting off with, I think I'm going to make myself one of my, one of the only cocktails that I really enjoy. Starts with a little bit of coffee. Now usually you'd have this cocktail hot, but today I'm having it cold because it has been excessively hot around my neighborhood where I live lately. So yeah, having something a little bit chill is probably going to be better. Secondly, add a little bit of cream. Next, gonna add some Irish whiskey. Just a little bit of it, not too much. I don't want to be super drunk for the rest of the day. Oop, go ahead and put that there so folks know what the heck it is I'm eating. And lastly, a little bit of brown sugar. Just for a little bit of sweetness. Mix all that together. Make one of the only cocktails that I really actually do enjoy. This is an Irish coffee. Cheers. Oh, that's so good. Oh my goodness. Just a little bit of a spike from that alcohol. Just a little bit sweet. And I don't like a whole lot of different kinds of whiskey, but I do think that Jameson makes a pretty good Irish whiskey. So when I do drink whiskey, it tends to be Jameson whiskey. So yeah, I hope you guys are ready to strap in, hang out with me for a couple of minutes today. Always good to hang out with you guys. Maybe you've got something that you want to snack on while we hang out. Maybe you're just here to look at my beautiful face and listen to me talk in my buttery tones. At any rate, as a competitive eater, one of the things that's always top of mind for me is how exactly I'm able to continue in my pursuit of becoming a better and better competitive eater while still maintaining a decent level of health and wellness. As I will be one of the first people out there to say that I'm decently knowledgeable about being healthy, ways to eat healthfully, ways to keep yourself healthy into the latter years of life. Obviously, I'm not an old guy, but I do feel that I'm a little bit healthier than most folks my age. I think that it's pretty common for Americans to just be kind of lazy and maybe a little bit blasé about their health when they go through their 20s and into their 30s, but I do try to take care of myself, and I try to be cognizant of it. And it is absolutely 100% true that competitive eating is not a healthy thing. I am healthy not because I'm a competitive eater, but I am healthy despite being a competitive eater, basically. So there are certain health effects of eating giant amounts of food that I think most people are familiar with. Some of them. There's always the risk of weight gain from the excessive caloric intake, stuff along those lines, which is really obvious. And of course, I do go out of my way to combat that by practicing moderation of the stuff that I eat and making sure that I exercise regularly to make sure that I'm not in a hypercaloric state consistently every single day, so that I'm only in a hypercaloric state on the days where I am doing competitive eating stuff. And of course, when I do have an indulgence like this, some Jameson whiskey, that's few and far between. So this is the kind of thing that I'm not going to have every single day. But when I do have something to drink, I want to make sure that it is good. So that's why I do this. And of course, taking care of yourself mentally, making sure you're not putting too much pressure on yourself, everything along those lines. But aside from the really obvious stuff of just eating a ton of food and taking in a ton of calories, there are some other health ramifications and some dangers of competitive eating that I think don't get a whole lot of attention, that might not be quite as like to the fore, quite as obvious to folks who are not involved in competitive eating. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to take a look at some of the dangers, some of the physiological changes that somebody goes through when they do try to become a competitive eater. And it's one of those things that, like, if you've ever seen an eating contest and thought to yourself, like, I'll bet I could do that. After you read about some of the changes, some of the physiological changes and challenges that us competitive eaters go through, like, you might reconsider becoming a competitive eater, or like really trying to train to be like a top, like a competitor in some of these eating contests. Because it is fun and silly and everything along those lines, but it is, like, it can be kind of frightening, some of the changes that goes through, that your body goes through. So, I found this article. Oh my goodness. Looks like the gain on this might be super high. I apologize if I've been blowing out people's ears. Let me turn down the gain on this a little bit. Yeah, folks in the chat, you're going to have to let me know if you can hear me all right, if this is just like way too loud, or if I'm blowing out the microphone or what, because like it looks like it's super loud, but I don't feel like I'm speaking super loud. So yeah, you guys are going to have to help me out. Let me know if the sound is just not working out. I was having a little bit of trouble with my microphone earlier today, so I might have to just get it replaced or something like that. It's getting kind of old. Anyway, let me see here. Where was I? Is it too loud? Adrian in the comments says that it's too loud. Let me turn down the gain. So, this is a test. I'm looking at my audio mixer. Okay, I think that might be a little bit better. It says that I'm in the yellow right now, kind of like top of the green, bottom of the yellow. It's not just super blown out. So sorry about that. I apologize to anybody who had to put up with that. Let me know if this sounds a little bit better. If you guys can hear me a little bit better. Okay, anyway, so I came across this article, which I thought was pretty interesting. This is on thetimes.com. And this is in their health section. It is entitled, "What's the competitive eating?" or here's what competitive eating does to your body. And it's kind of a decent overview. This is a couple of years old, from 2014. So this was, I think, the year before, maybe 2 years before Matt Stoney beat Joey Chestnut at the Coney Island hot dog eating contest. And this is July 3rd, so it was the day before the Coney Island hot dog eating contest that year. And it mainly focuses on Joey Chestnut. It says, it's not a super long article, so I'll probably read through most of it. So it says, tomorrow will likely mark competitive eater Joey Chestnut's 8th straight year of winning the Nathan's famous 4th of July hot dog eating contest. Chestnut is now 30 years old and weighs 230 pounds, not an especially large man. In fact, many serious competitive eaters appear to be relatively thin and healthy. So how do they eat so many hot dogs and stay healthy, and is it safe? Not much research has been done on competitive eating, but several doctors from the University of Pennsylvania did an experiment for National Geographic Special, the results of which were published in the Journal of Genology? I don't know what that is. They wanted to find out what happens to competitive eaters' stomachs, so they compared two men, one champion eater and one non-competitive eating man, the control who simply had a healthy appetite. The men were asked to consume as many hot dogs as they could in 12 minutes. The researchers noted that after eating hot dogs, the competitive eaters' stomachs appeared to be massively distended, food-filled sacs occupying most of the upper abdomen. There was also little or no gastric peristalsis, the squeezing motion that normally helps the stomach break down food. Matt Levine, one of the study's authors and a gastrointestinal radiologist from the University of Pennsylvania, said he was amazed by the amount of food that fit in the speed eater's stomach. This was not some inherent skill he had since he was a child, says Levine. For many months, he would practice by eating larger and larger volumes of food. He was also able to overcome the satiety reflex. And once he did that, the stomach overcame the peristalsis activity so that it was able to accept an unlimited amount of food. I don't know if I would say unlimited amount of food. There's definitely an upper limit. And I can get into a little bit of that too. So this goes on to describe what the satiety reflex is. some of the acute effects, like choking, is certainly a hazard in some of these eating contests. One thing about Major League Eating events is that they always have EMTs on hand, and I could talk about the dangers of choking, but again, I think that's something that most people are familiar with. So they talked about the study. I think this was the study that they were referring to. It's just about the only study out there. Like, there's not a whole ton of studies on competitive eaters, and this does have a little bit more like in-depth scientific information about what they measured on competitive eaters. So the now this one is super large, and actually the font on this page is super tiny, so I got to get out my reading glasses for this one. I look a little bit nerdy with those, but they do the trick. Let's see. The purpose of our investigation was to assess the stomachs of world-class speed eating champions. Oh, thank you for that nice pop-up. Champions and a control subject speed eating test in the gastrointestinal fluoroscopy suite to determine how the competitive eaters are able to eat so much food so fast. The conclusion, our observations suggest that the successful speed eaters expand the stomach to form an enormous flaccid sac capable of accommodating huge amounts of food. We speculate that professional speed eaters eventually may develop morbid obesity, profound gastroparesis, intractable nausea and vomiting, and even the need for a gastrectomy. Despite its growing popularity, competitive speed eating is potentially self-destructive form of behavior. I think that's a lot of speculation. There's not a whole lot of evidence to back up some of this. The morbid obesity, like I said, it's just calorie balance. Some people can eat a ton of food on just one day a week and be perfectly fine. Adrian, I see you've got a question in the comments. The other risk is the stomach ripping open, right? I don't think that's a giant risk. I've heard that there's some risk of the stomach like detaching from the esophagus and detaching from the small intestine, but I mean that's going to a major extreme. Like, that's the kind of thing that could only happen, that typically only happens from an acute, like some kind of acute event, like if you were struck in the stomach somehow. From just eating way too much food, typically you're going to reach a point where you're just going to regurgitate food before you get to that kind of point from, just eating too much. Oh my goodness. And you do ask if you've always wondered if competitive eaters just purge after a competition. It is pretty common for competitive eaters to do that. Not everyone does. I've purged after a couple of competitions, but typically if I'm not eating too much, then I'm unless I have a good reason to, I'm not going to do it. But it is something that does occur. I think that it's something that a lot of competitive eaters go into a competition expecting they're going to have to. For me personally, if I feel like it after competition, after eating 10 or 12 pounds of food, sometimes you just kind of feel like it needs to happen. But no, I'm not going to go into a competition expecting to do that. I think one example is last December when I did the shrimp cocktail eating contest. Those shrimp cocktail were a lot more difficult to eat than I expected, so I ended up not eating nearly as much food as I had expected, and that was one of those times where it's I just went home, or went back to my hotel and slept it off. Oh my goodness. Let me see here. So this, scrolling through here, they had some interesting pictures. I think these are CT scans of the stomachs of some of the eaters. Yeah, you can see, this is kind of difficult to see this. I can pull up some better pictures of the stomachs of competitive eaters, so I'm not going to dwell too much on that. But yeah, I think that the main point of this article was that, how should I say, when your stomach does expand when you do stretch out your stomach to try to become better at competitive eating, not only does your stomach expand, not only are you practicing letting your stomach grow and expand a lot more, but also you've got other organs inside of you, and after a while, after you get to a certain point, your stomach can't expand any further without like pressing against some of the other organs inside of your abdominal cavity. So one of the dangers that a lot of people don't realize from competitive eating is that once your stomach expands to a certain point, then you do have to like your stomach like literally starts pressing against some of your other internal organs. So one of the consequences of that is, especially with the kidneys, if you apply pressure to the kidneys too frequently and too much, that can actually cause some kidney damage. You'll see like frequent urination, and that will cause, too much diuresis will cause dehydration. You'll flush out minerals and nutrients that are required for your body. So you can get really unhealthy in that way, and it can actually cause kidney damage. I've never heard of anything other than the kidneys, but I could imagine that you might run into some consequences from having pressure on some of your other internal organs, things along those lines. And it did mention that one of the other dangers is, what do they call it? When your stomach no longer engages in peristalsis. I'm trying to remember what it was called. Let me see. Profound gastroparesis. So that's something where your stomach just no longer is able to squeeze and no longer able to like actually squeeze food through to the rest of your digestive system. So it's a very strange thing that occurs, and this can result in the need for getting a gastrectomy, which is literally just getting your stomach removed and attaching your esophagus straight to your small intestine. So that this is something that is more common for people who have stomach cancer, but it is it's a very, very invasive procedure. It's something that after that occurs, then obviously you're not able to maintain the kinds of diet that you would have been able to maintain previously. And it is one of those things that like I really think about a lot. Every time that I really fill up my stomach is how many times can I do this before I would have some of these serious health ramifications, which might be irreversible without significant intervention, like a medical intervention, stuff like that. So it is kind of scary, but it's. People like Joey Chestnut and who else? Badlands Booker. They've been doing competitive eating for so long. Obviously, somehow they've been able to maintain their health through all the years. Joey Chestnut certainly has. I know Badlands Booker, probably not the kind of guy when you look at, you think, oh, he's certainly a healthy guy. Mainly because he is a very, very large gentleman. But he's been able to at least be a part of the competitive eating scene for multiple decades, I believe. I think he's been doing it for more than 20 years. So he's kept his longevity in it somehow. So good for him. Let me see here. Adrian, another great question, or another great comment actually, says, I see Matt Stoney eating massive volumes of sodium. I'd be more worried about those health effects. That's another really interesting point where a lot of competitive eaters, instead of training by eating large amounts of food, they'll train by by drinking large amounts of water. So one of the problems that you can run into for people who train this way consistently is actually the opposite of that, where if you drink too much water, the reason that's really dangerous and the reason you can get something that's called water poisoning, I actually brought up a page on this. I believe it's called water toxicity or water poisoning or something like that, is that if you drink too much water, then when you urinate it out, your body also flushes out a lot of sodium with it. And this can cause a dangerously low level of sodium in your body. So you can actually run into the opposite problem by having too much sodium. And so I think that, if you hear about the dangers of a high sodium diet, all of them, every single one of the dangers of a high sodium diet can be combated by just drinking enough water. It's really overblown. It's having too much sodium and too little water, which can cause a lot of the high blood pressure problems from that are associated with a high sodium diet. But unfortunately, if you go too far the opposite direction, like I was saying, if you train by drinking gallons of water at a time, then you can cause an unsafe low level of sodium in your body, and that's called hyponatremia. This is actually something that's also fairly common with marathon running, Ironman triathlon, stuff like that, especially in warmer climates, where you are drinking a lot of water at one time. So this is just WebMD talk a little bit about hyponatremia. It says low blood sodium is a condition that means you don't have enough sodium in your blood. Sounds pretty self-explanatory. You may need some sodium in your bloodstream. You need some sodium in your bloodstream to control how much water is in and around the cells in your body. It can happen because of certain medical conditions, some medicines you take, or if you, some medicines you might be taking, or if you drink too much water. There you go, boom. If you drink too much water, it can cause low levels of blood sodium. Basically, like it dilutes the levels of sodium in your blood. Oh my goodness. So one of the ways that you can combat this is just basically like anytime you do drink a ton of water, just make sure you're spiking it with a little bit of sodium. Getting that right mix of like salt and water in there is how you avoid getting hyponatremia from drinking too much water. And I have had hyponatremia, acute hyponatremia a couple of times, and it's really unpleasant. Like it just, it's very, very unpleasant. So how much is too low? These are just a bunch of numbers that probably aren't going to mean anything to anybody. Unless you happen to have PhD after your name. Or MD, I guess I should say, not PhD. So hyponatremia symptoms. You may have any symptoms. You may not have any symptoms if your hyponatremia is very mild. Symptoms usually appear when your blood sodium suddenly rises or drops. Signs of hyponatremia include nausea and vomiting, fatigue, headache or confusion, cramps or spasms in your muscles, irritability and restlessness, and weakness. So in the past, when I've had hyponatremia, let's see, I've had, you get a really bad headache, and the cramps are also very, very bad. And you get these cramps that, like if you hear people talk about cramps when they're exercising, for example, they're typically talking about cramps in specifically the muscles that they're working out. And a lot of people will attribute this to like sodium imbalance and not getting enough electrolytes and stuff like that. And that's mainly bogus. Like that's if you have a true electrolyte imbalance, you're not going to get a cramp in one single muscle. You know, if you're running a race and all of a sudden you've got a cramp in your hamstring, that's from just overusing your hamstring. That's not from an electrolyte imbalance. If you do have an electrolyte imbalance, what tends to happen is you get cramps in all of your muscles, all over your entire body. Like it's kind of like this tingling feeling where you feel all of your muscles firing like in this very strange pattern, like rapidly and just a very small amount. So a lot of times when I have had hyponatremia in the past, really my hands have cramped up quite a bit, and also in my neck. But you know, you kind of like feel it all over your body. So it's a very unpleasant feeling. I gotta say, it really sucks. Oh my goodness. Let me see here. So hyponatremia, it is something that can occur, and this is one of those like acute things that can occur over the course of a single day, not something that's going to build up over time. But it is something to kind of be aware of when you're talking about this kind of stuff. Let me see here. Oh yeah. I also pulled up this article. The main reason that I wanted to pull up this article is because it had this picture in it. This is, let me zoom in here. This is the stomach of a competitive eater, right? So this one over here is a competitive eater. Can I just click on this, bring it up? Okay. So this one over here is a competitive eater who's eaten. This is the picture of someone's stomach, and this is a picture of. Obviously, you can see this is a scan of somebody's abdomen. Probably got a bunch of stuff going on in their lower abdomen. Up here is around where their rib cage would be, and this is like somebody's stomach with food in it. Like this is something that somebody might have eaten breakfast or maybe just after Thanksgiving dinner or something like that. And over here on the right is a competitive eater's stomach. Like you can see, it's insane. Like the stomach is just filling the entire abdominal cavity. Like it's absolutely insane. It's squeezing all of those organs inside of the abdominal cavity. And like I mentioned, that can cause some kidney damage if you do have that, if you do put that kind of pressure on your internal organs too frequently. So yeah, I think that those are some of the like more frightening things about competitive eating. And I will put a disclaimer there, like a big asterisk. So number one, I am not a medical professional. I think that I know a little bit more than your average bear about it, but like I don't know that there's anything that I know that is particularly specialized. I haven't studied medicine. Like, I've got the degree of hard knocks, basically, and the degree of I read a lot of books. So and a lot of experience, basically, of experiencing some of this stuff myself. So I do have a bit of experience. I do know a little bit about it myself, but yeah, this is not the kind of stuff that you should take away as being like pure scientific fact. Like, I kind of like to put these facts out there to spark people's interest so that they can maybe like read deeper into some of these things themselves if they really want to. Let me see here. Where was I going to go with that? But yeah, I was also going to say that all the dangers from competitive eating are like the very, very extreme end of things. Like 99.9% of people out there, or 99.9% of contests out there that are occurring, nothing bad ever happens. It's very rare when you see people who have come down with these acute conditions from competitive eating. It's really rare, really few and far between. I mean, it does happen. There's certainly long-term health consequences, but it is something that, like, you're not going to hurt yourself in 2 days from competitive eating, that kind of thing. But it is something that if you do want to have some longevity in the sport of competitive eating, then it is something that you need to be cognizant of. I know that Eater X, I believe was his name, or the moniker that he went by. I don't actually know that guy's actual name, but a couple of years ago he put out this ultimatum that he said he was going to beat Joey Chestnut at the Nathan's Famous Hot Dog Eating Contest. And he actually gave up competitive eating that year because he felt that it had just too much of a negative consequence on his health. Like, the physiological ramifications were something that he did not want to deal with. Well, Adrian, thank you for being super active in the chat today, asking some good questions. It says, I noticed you, another good question, says you notice the high volumes of sugar that I eat in my eating videos, and am I worried about running the risk of insulin resistance? That is a great question. I've talked about type 2 diabetes in the past, actually. And honestly, no. I mean, let me rephrase that. I don't believe that I am at any risk of running into any problems with insulin resistance, but that's because I am very cognizant of it. I'm an endurance athlete, so I burn a lot of glycogen. I'm very consistently in a glycogen depleted state. So my body can just like snap up 500 grams of sugar just like that, and it's going to have zero consequence on my health. 500 grams of sugar, that's not an arbitrary number. That's roughly how much glycogen that your body can store at any one time. So when I am glycogen depleted, I can take up a lot more sugar than somebody who doesn't exercise consistently. And then also, like I said, this is not something that I do consistently day after day after day. It's something that I do on a very acute basis, so that if you are... of course, if you do have these wild fluctuations and consistently high blood sugar, that can lead to type 2 diabetes, to insulin resistance, things along those lines. But by doing it infrequently, then you're kind of safeguarding yourself. And like I said, I do go out of my way to make sure that I avoid high glycemic sugar when I'm not doing competitive eating. When I'm exercising, I try to rely more on really low glycemic sugar. I actually use this product called Generation UCAN Super Starch, which is very, very low glycemic index carbohydrate that's specifically made to avoid spiking your blood sugar. So yeah, I mean, it's stuff that I think that it's something that could very easily happen if somebody did eat as much sugar as me without taking into account, without like trying to combat it in various ways. But yeah, like my father's an endocrinologist, so that's another, he's the kind of, an endocrinologist is the kind of doctor who works with people with insulin resistance and diabetes. So I feel like I can just like talk to him about it, and he can give me kind of the skinny on how to stay healthy, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I get my blood checked, probably not as frequently as I should, but I just make sure that I'm healthy and taking care of myself. And so far, and I will say that I think that it isn't a coincidence that I'm the kind of guy who goes out and runs like 20 miles on the weekend for fun, and that I eat a lot of sugar. Running like that, being an endurance athlete, lends itself to like really craving that kind of like sugary, sweet, high carb food. So I think that if I wasn't an endurance athlete, you'd probably see different kinds of content on my channel. I'd be eating a lot less sugar and carb-rich food and a lot more, I don't know, just a lot more like hamburgers, meat challenges, stuff like that. You know, different body types go for different kinds of food. Thank you. This Irish coffee is very delicious. I think having a nice cold drink on a hot summer day like this, yeah, we're going through a heat wave right now, so it's even warmer than usual. I'm glad that you guys can't see how much I'm sweating underneath this shirt right now. I think that I wasn't even thinking about it, but I think having this darker shirt was probably a good idea for this stream. All right, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys found this interesting. Maybe you just wanted to hang out. Maybe you had a snack along the way. In any case, you guys have a good one. Stay safe and stay happy and stay healthy. All those good things. Stay hungry, of course, all the time. And until Wednesday, peace out. You guys have a good one. Oh, hey, look. YouTube live streaming video finally added an end stream button again. Yes. By the way, a little behind the scenes. YouTube's live streaming studio changed its interface a couple of weeks ago, and I have not enjoyed it. Like, I wish that the old interface would come back. So I think hopefully they're iterating on it and making it a little bit better. All right. That's all from me. I'll see you guys later. Oh, gotta click the end button now.